about to harvest my Tromboncino squash, which was one of my favorite squashes. I learned about it when I was an apprentice farmer. Tromboncino squash are an heirloom Italian variety, and it's actually a winter squash that we harvest young. I don't know who discovered that, but I'm grateful because this is a much like meatier kind of squash. And since the seeds develop in the little bell here at the end, really similar to like a butternut squash, the rest of the squash is always seedless and is really good. Like, it holds its texture in things like curries or soups, or I like to put it in enchiladas, like a vegetarian enchilada. But there's a few things I'm looking for when I harvest, and we'll harvest another one in a second. But the first thing is I'm looking for the neck to be almost an inch, like up to or almost an inch wide. I harvest these on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Today's Friday, so sometimes I go a little bit hard because I don't want it to over mature over the weekend. Monday, Wednesday, Friday gives us 1 day between most harvests, but then Friday to Monday is 2 days. And so if I let this go a little too long, it might start to look more like a butternut squash. You can see the striping on here. In addition to the neck size, the other thing I look for is the color. The squashes start out of like a really true kind of matte lime green here. And then they start to develop these little stripes. And eventually, if I were to leave it on the vine, it would look like a butternut squash. Or if I cured it in the prop house, it would look like a butternut squash. So it's got that pale yellow color. But I'm looking for, when I harvest color-wise, a kind of combination of those. Like, I've got the green with these little tan stripes, and that means to me that it's ready to harvest. So it's like young enough that it has like limited seed development, but it's old enough that there's enough food for me to like prep and eat. So come in here and I'll show you another one. Tromboncino squash is a vining squash. So again, another similarity to butternut squash. I love that as well, especially for an early season succession, because just like I trellis the cucumbers with a lower and lean or a string trellis system, I can do the same with my Tromboncino squash. And so I started it down there and put up strings for it to climb, or for me to train it to climb up, and that's why you see this vine here. That just makes it a lot easier for me to harvest, and for me to see the squash. So here I saw one poking out, and I'm gonna just use my snips to clip it at the top. I try really hard not to move my leaves out of the way when I pull it out, because the leaves themselves are really spiky, and they can damage the tender skin. If you look really closely, you can see that there is like water coming out of it right now. That is from where the leaves scratched it. So it's a very delicate skin. If I were to leave them on a little bit longer and let them develop more, the skin would thicken up and we wouldn't see as much damage. But then we might not want to eat the skin. Like, you don't eat butternut squash skin, but I love eating the skin. Skin eater? And that's my favorite kind of squash, Tromboncino.